thank you very much for coming today for our Park Row Strategy meeting hosted by Open Park Row Now Coalition and CCBA. We're very grateful to CCBA to host us today, and I'm going to turn it over to President Tony Choi to give us a few words of welcome.
Thank you.
Yep, turn
Thank you, Jen. Yes, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Tony Shu, the president of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association. And I just want to quickly introduce who's on my right and my left. We have on my right hand side, or your left hand side, we have Honorable Catherine Fleet. We also have Christopher Mott. On my left hand side, we have Jan Lee, everybody knows Jan, and also Triple Edwards. I think the reason why we are here today, we have one thing in common, is that majority of us want to see Park Row reopen again. It is very essential to us because that determines what's the future in Chinatown. As you can see, Chinatown is going down, it's going downward, and everything is getting worse and worse. All right. So that's the reason why I totally support Jenny and the Reopen Park Row Coalition, and that's the reason why we're here. So, without further talking, I turn the mic to Jen.
Thank you, Mr. President. A brief history of CCBA's involvement in Park Row. Since the days of 9/11, this institution helped Chinatown, one of the very first responding organizations to provide access, provide a triage area where people could come and meet with their government, meet with the elected officials, to have a centralized place. And so CCBA has been here for us since the beginning. Probably 10 presidents that I know of have all called for the reopening of Park Row, one after another. And Tony being the one who's in the seat now and has from day one opened his doors to this conversation. And so I want to say thank you again to not only CCBA, but the 60 organizations that comprise this powerful and influential institution. So a round of applause for CCBA for 20 years. And of course, I want to thank all of you who have taken this time out of your day to come here to talk about the reopening or whatever opinions you have, and all opinions are welcome here about what Park Row should be, should become, and the future of it, to take the time out of your day. So thank you all. And I want to recognize that we have obviously our council member, Christopher Mott, again, from the time he was campaigning to the time to today. He is here with us on this issue. And we'll give ample opportunity for him to talk about the history of his involvement in this issue. But we are represented by our Congressman Dan Goldman, by John Blasco in the room, Fanny Ip, who is from Assemblymember Grace Lee's office, Dan Byers from Senator Kavanaugh's office. And so I also want to let you guys know, Robin Forst is here from the City of New York, Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. So difficult seat to be in today, but I do want to say that the mayor's office has sent someone, so be very aware of that. We really appreciate you being here, Robin. We appreciate the fact that you have your notepad out and that you're ready to take notes and hopefully answer a few questions at the end. So thank you very much for that. To acquaint all of you, we're not going to go around the room because there's so many organizations and so many people, but I would like you to raise your hand if I call out your organization. Of course, we've recognized CCBA. Open Park Row Now Coalition is several people here who are representing, so thank you all for all the work that you've put into this. And I see Barry from Hamilton Madison House. I see Poling from CPC. Amy Chin from Think Chinatown is here. I don't know if we have a representative from the WOW Project. Gotham Park, we have representation of Elizabeth Lewinson from Gotham Park, Chung Pak Seniors, and of course the Kiwanis. Thank you so much for representing that group. First Baptist Church, I think we reached out to them. 21 Pell is also Neighbors on Canal, which is a block association. Hi, Sandy Lay from the back of the room there. we have a number of people who have been very active in the shelter opposition groups too, because those are overlapping groups, and many of you have sat in on meetings that overlap with different issues here, so we appreciate that as well. And CB1 is here. We have representatives from Community Board 1 and Community Board 3. I see Lee Berman's here, and a number of residents. We also have district leaders. Victoria, if you're a district leader, please raise your hand. There's several Lees here as well. There's a number of us who are represented on congestion pricing issues as well. And I think Dr. Thomas Chan is late. Chatham Towers Co-op and Southbridge Towers, we have representatives of that group as well. And the Kiwanis Club, as I acknowledged earlier, Transfiguration Church is here. I think Tiwa Chang is late as well. We have, and Coma, who is a media organization here in Chinatown, is with us. And I mentioned the City Hall earlier as well. So thank you all for making the time. And if I have left you out, I apologize. We'll definitely acknowledge you at the end of this. So if you have something to say, we'll have plenty of time at the end of the meeting for that as well. We can't fit everyone, obviously, in Chinatown and the surrounding areas, but we did the best that we could in a short amount of time. So I apologize to anyone that we have left out of this. It wasn't intentional, but it was done as fast as we could in the limited space that we could with CCBA. There's a complicated history with Park Row, and I want to carve out a few minutes for someone in our coalition to talk briefly about that history. Jeannie Chin, who has been recognized in the last town hall that we had as one of the pioneers and one of the people who has founded the Civic Center Residents Coalition. I see John Ost is also a founder, who actually created all of the mechanisms to sue the NYPD for their occupation of Park Row. And so, Jeannie, would you give us a few minutes about what that...
Okay, thank you. Okay, after 9/11, Park Road was the epicenter of a land grab by One Police Plaza. No one was allowed to walk or drive from St. James Place to Center Street, from Worth Street all the way to the other side of the Brooklyn Bridge on Frankfurt Street. Once Park Road was a vital artery connecting Chinatown to Lower Manhattan. Park Road was part of the East Side's Broadway, running the entire length of Manhattan to the front of City Hall. Perpendicular parking suddenly appeared on Park Road, painted during the night. Street sidewalks and the Brooklyn Bridge entryway to Chinatown and a local park and bus routes were all turned into parking lots. Streets were worn back block by block, including parts of Madison and Pearl Street, and the alleyways by the side of St. Andrews leading to the Municipal. So you can just imagine the devastation at that time. The Civic Center Residents Coalition, comprising of Chatham Green, Chatham Towers, Smith Houses, Confucius Plaza, and Southbridge Towers at that time, filed five lawsuits against police headquarters, with funding from the CCBA, Chatham Towers, Chatham Green, Asian American Legal Defense, and Education Fund were phenomenal. The American Red Cross and other city agencies and individuals. 2 lawsuits forced the NYPD out of James Madison Plaza Park. 2 lawsuits resulted in an EAS and an EIS. And Article 78 hindered One Police Plaza from expanding further without an environmental impact study. Our CB3 and CB1 helped strategize and fund projects to open Chinatown and Civic Center roadways. In addition, both community boards voted down the DOT, EDC's Park Row and Chatham Square reconfiguration plans after a traffic study by our community traffic engineer. The same 2008-2009 plans that are now being recycled by the DOT, EDC, and NYPD is being presented to us. This is the exact same plan. The swamping of Chinatown Civic Center streets by government vehicles with legal and illegal parking permits, even at bus stops, forced us to demand an accounting of the number of government permit parkers, over 140,000. NYPD vehicles parked on sidewalks and streets, forcing people to walk single file up our own streets. Delivery trucks had nowhere to park and were ticketed when they double parked. MTA bus routes were rerouted and took years to restore 2 of them. This solid ring of barricades and checkpoints created a chokehold, and within a year, 24 businesses around Chatham Square and Park Road closed permanently. After 9/11, all emergency vehicles had to make circuitous, congested turns to get into Chinatown during peak hours. Speedy and direct access to downtown hospital and the Beekman Street Firehouse were lost when Park Road and part of Madison Street were barricaded. A Southbridge neighbor pointed out that fire trucks from Brooklyn go over the Brooklyn Bridge to Lower Manhattan when there are large fires, but the Brooklyn Bridge entryway to Chinatown remains a closed government commuter parking lot. Compounding the problem was the loss of the 400-car municipal garage taken by 1PP when it was already a give back to Chinatown for building police headquarters. Much of the open street sidewalks, bus services that we see today in Chinatown and the city center were restored because of the incredible efforts of many people in this room. Mayor Adams said at a town hall last year that Chinatown must make the decision whether they want Park Road open or closed. Let's open Park Road not only for our safety, but so Chatham Square can once again thrive with unobstructed access from uptown through Chinatown and Lower Manhattan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Thank you. That's a lot of history, and I'm glad that Jeannie was able to recap really 20 years of work and advocacy. Many of you in this room have been there for the same fight. And there's a few people I'd like to acknowledge that actually helped us along the way. Former council member Alan Gerson was there. Senator John Liu was there. Lydia Velasquez was involved in this talk. Even as high as Chuck Schumer and Sheldon Silver also helped us get the bus routes back. So this is a very long history of incremental steps forward. We are at a difficult position today, but I want to ask Catherine, who is one of our former council members, what this has been meaning to you and what this has meant to you as a former council member who's also been in Chris's seat to talk about Park Road.
Okay, thank you. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay, now it's on. Anyway, thank you, Jan, and I also want to thank CCBA for hosting us. This is, as everyone has said, this has been a long process. I mean, I was at the beginning end of this because I was a council member during 9/11 when they closed Park Row without ever even notifying us that they were doing it. It was a complete, surprise. Now, of course, everything was being closed at that time. I believe they closed part of Wall Street at the same time. The problem is, while other streets have closed and other communities have been closed off, Park Row in Chinatown still remains closed. It's the one area that we've had no real response from, even though there have been some offers periodically, and certainly we thought at one point that Mayor Adams was going to finally open it, because it's clear that it not only causes a pinch point to the traffic, but it in addition to the fact it causes problems with emergency vehicles, as Jeannie mentioned, but it's been horrendous for businesses. And whatever you feel about congestion pricing, the point is that more businesses have problems, more businesses have ceased to exist between the pandemic and the problems with that. The whole community has felt somewhat under attack, and in truth, the business community has been suffering. And in fact, Chinatown has one of the highest store vacancy and turnover rates in the entire city. It's something like 5th from the top. So it lets you know the problems we've been dealing with, and the problems we've had almost forever with the vehicles with plaques that we've never been able to get rid of. And also the fact, and I'll mention this and then I'll turn it over to Chris, also the fact that the municipal parking lot that has 400 parking spaces, which was promised to this community when this community got the jail the first time, the trade-off was to get the municipal parking lot, and that has also been closed. So now we have no open Park Row, we have no 400 parking places, and it's time for this community to stand up and say that we're sick of it and we want Park Row opened. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. One second before we get to Chris, I wanted to carve out some time with our colleague Triple Edwards, who is a resident of Park Row. And for those of you who don't know, and I know that many of you don't know, there is a meeting going on for the last year called the Chinatown Connections Working Group Meeting. Very few of you are in there. And the reason is that this is run by the city agency EDC. The people who are in that meeting because they were chosen to be in that meeting, and other people who we recommended, Chris and I and many people have recommended people to be in that meeting, were not allowed in that meeting. There is no press allowed in that meeting. It is a vetted group, and there's no minutes. So what is said in that meeting in opposition to a current plan or in favor of that current plan is not recorded. So there isn't anything that you could look up to say, what did Triple Everett say on the meeting of January 3rd? That's not available to you. So we have with us Triple, who has been, and thank you Triple for a year of meetings that he has been attending in the EDC Chinatown Working Group meetings. I wanted Triple to give you an idea of what's going on now and what it's like being inside the only meeting that discusses Park Row sort of as a conduit to our government. And this is one of the impetuses that, working with President Choi, we decided to make this really inclusive of all of you. So it's kind of the opposite of that meeting. So Triple, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah. And I've said a lot in those meetings. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin, but saying that the Chinatown Core Block Association that I represent has given me this awesome responsibility to sit inside as a stakeholder in Chinatown. And some of you are there, some of you are not there. But they have been pushing together a plan from the get-go that mirrors the 2008 Chatham Square reconfiguration that they planned in 2008 under the Bloomberg administration. And it's supposed to be a collaborative effort, but again, with no notes, minutes, or anything, it feels a lot like we're not being listened to. And I have been pushing back on the Park Row issue and opening Park Row, as many other people have been as well. And their purpose is to take the money for these 3 projects inside of Chinatown that has been allocated $55 million to push through, and as all the stakeholders there, they want to be able to contribute to what we want, what Chinatown wants. So it's good to have all of you here because we need to hear what you want, even if it's contrary to opening up Park Road. The justifications and whatever reasoning you have is important as well. But what had happened is we've been going along and we've been talking about what we want. And in the last meeting, we had a presentation from NYPD Counterterrorism. And as some of you may have heard, they decided to shut down Park Row permanently. And they pulled out a presentation that, again, was presented in 2008, and they basically rehashed it, even though we are 23 years past 9/11. And it's only because of the advocacy of all of this community that has been pushing back on all of this that they addressed this, because really their plan was to do a traffic study and then confront this issue. But I believe it's because we've all pushed back, we have 7,000 signatures, we have a successful town hall, that they kind of pulled out at the 25th hour and said, security reasons, we need to do it. I sat through the same presentation they did in 2008, and they presented to Marte. Marte's seen it before. And they show you a pipe bomb blowing up. They show you another car bomb blowing up. And then they use these examples. There's so much to push back on here because there's so many holes in what they're calling security. And One Police Plaza is so vulnerable, even if you shut down Park Road to all the public traffic. And we can totally push back on it, but it's kind of left us, and it's kind of left a lot of our electeds scratching their heads like, what do we do now? How do we fight that now? And we need this collaborative group to come up with what it is. Do we have a leg to stand on? How do we fight back on it? What do we want? Do we want it open? Do we not want it open?
Thank you so much. Around what time was that announcement made in the Chinatown Connections? You saw the presentation of the NYPD. How many weeks ago were we talking about?
That was on January 22nd is when they did it. Like I said, I've been going to meetings for over a year, and they've been putting it off and saying, wait until the traffic report comes, and then we'll decide, does it need it, does it not need it, you know? What's been tough is that, you know, I just had a long conversation with someone from DRI who controls that funding. And they told me that they did so much outreach, and nobody mentioned in this outreach that they wanted Park Row open. And I had to push back and go, you know, there is a huge disconnect if that's what you're saying, because this community is saying and has been saying for 23 years that they want this open. So we gotta investigate this further.
And for those of you standing, please, there's seats here. You can come in and take a seat. Anyone else who's standing outside, please be welcome to come in. Mariama is from District Leader. Thank you so much for coming. I want to play, I'm going to give Chris a minute to talk, give him a minute to talk just after this, but I want to play a recording of the Mayor of New York.
That was important. Oh, Park Row. How many people want Park Row open? To vehicle traffic. How many people want Park Row open to vehicle traffic? How many people don't want Park Row open to vehicle traffic? Okay. And we had a date. The councilman came to me. We had a date when we were opening Park Row to vehicle traffic. We had a date locked in. And we already sat down and spoke to the police department, the judges, the federal courts. We spoke to everyone. And we said, listen, this is the date it's going to be open. Then the electeds came to me and said, Eric, we don't want it open. And so now I'm caught in between the two. And so I went back to my councilman, and I told the councilman, you guys get in the room and you figure this out. If you guys figure it out and you want it open, I'm gonna open it. If you guys figure it out and say you want it closed, I'm gonna close. If you want it partial open, partial open. I'm not trying to get in the middle of your fight. You tell me what you want, and I will implement it. If you come to consensus and open it, we will open it immediately. If you come...
So with that,
When was that time?
that was the mayor's town hall that was in, I can't remember the street, but it was several months ago. There is no better person to answer the mayor's town hall meeting. He didn't have a chance to speak at that moment, but I am going to turn the microphone over to our council member who was mentioned by the mayor himself. Chris, what do you say to that?
I'll start from the beginning and then I'll get to that moment in time. Hi everyone, I'm Councilmember Christopher Marte. First of all, I want to thank CCBA, Tony Chu, and Jan was right. From day one, when we first talked, he said, I want to open up Park Row, I want to hit the ground running, and that's what he's been doing ever since. So thank you, Tony, for your leadership for this community. Of course, Jan, who's been able to not only organize, but get us together to be one force, and Triple, who has been the voice of reason in these meetings and really advocating for what we believe the majority of our community wants, especially on Park Row. I also want to acknowledge Tammy from Community Board 1, who has been, almost decisive here to Triple, making sure that, we don't allow the city just to use these meetings to pit us against each other and have them check the box. But these two folks have made sure that our community were heard again, and heard again, because that's what we need to do to make sure that this administration follows what our community wants to do in regards to Park Row. Of course, Catherine Freed, who has not only been the council member, but has been an organizer and lawyer in defending our community, whether it's with Park Row or East Aurora Park. So she's been great, and thank you, Catherine, for being here. A lot of the history already has been mentioned, so I'm not going to go into when this happened, but I want to talk about my involvement and how we almost got to 24 hours of opening up Park Row to vehicular traffic at nights and weekends. And so when I first took office, I knew this was a mandate from Chinatown to say, we need to organize, we need to push forward, we need a council member who is determined to open up Park Row. And even before I set foot in City Hall, I met with Senator Chuck Schumer and spoke to him about Park Row. And at that meeting, he said, I'm fully supportive of it. Let me know what you needed to do. This was an important approval because there are federal agencies that are along Park Row, and that for a long time were used as the scapegoat to say, oh, we can't do this as a city because of the federal courthouses, the former correction center that's there as well wouldn't allow us to have vehicle traffic. So having his approval on day one was, is exactly what we needed to move forward. And so I started working with DOT, with NYPD, with the mayor's office to figure out when, how can we get this open. And at first the mayor was open to it. He said, I was a police officer who would go to 1PP all the time. He understood the constraints and how this divided our communities, how this divided the financial district, and I know there's some Southbridge residents here today, how that created a disconnect to Chinatown and the Lower East Side. And so at first he was gung-ho. He said, work with my, at the time, Deputy Mayor of Public Safety to figure out a plan. My office met with the Deputy Mayor at that time. He was fully supportive of it. He said one of the most crucial lines that I've heard in the past 3 years. He says, us not opening up Park Row allows the terrorists to continue to win, right? We can't go back to normal because of what they did.
Yep.
And the only way we return back to normal is by opening up Park Row and finally showing that the city can go back to normal and go back to what we were. And so he had the focus, he understood what we wanted to achieve, and we got an agreement. Last year, I negotiated an agreement with the mayor and the deputy mayor to say, let's open up Park Row on evenings and on weekends and see how it works. We can collect data, whether it's 6 months or a year, and figure out what is the permanent solution. They said yes. And so they put up a sign on the entrance of Park Row that said, Park Row is gonna be open. 5 to 10 hours later, the mayor showed me a letter that was sent by one of the developments at Park Row and said, I got this letter. It seems like there is a group of people who do not want Park Row open. I assured him that's not what the majority of Chinatown wants. Of course, with every single issue, there's gonna be a small vocal minority that disagrees. Whatever you do in New York City, right? There's 8 million people, 10 million opinions, right? As the mayor always says. And so he said, okay, we're gonna continue to see what we can do to move forward. However, there was an elected official that represents us that is not here and is not represented here who told the mayor, we should not move forward, we should keep it closed. And that changed. I'll let Jan mention his name. But that really changed the course. And that really, the letter from Chatham Green's board and that elected official saying no, really told the mayor, I can't move forward. 2 months later, we had a town hall at PS2. And the mayor, as Jan played on his phone, said, how many people in this room want Park Row open to vehicle traffic? 99% of the room raised their hand. Even some of the people on the dais raised their hand who work for city agencies. And then he asked, how many people want it closed permanently? Only one person raised their hand. And so he saw the visual that I've been telling him every single day, that the majority of this community wants it open. It'll help our small businesses. It'll help connection. It'll help revitalize not just the Seaport, the financial district, but also Lower East Side and Chinatown. It's something crucial that we need, and it's something that people have been asking for almost over 20 years. And we've been at a stalemate. And as Triple mentioned, we started these Chinatown Connection Working Group meetings because the city granted our community around $45 million from Kim Lau Square and added the DRI funds on top of that to revitalize that community and their perspective. But it's been a sham. They could have shown us this presentation of the potential bomb threat on day one.
Yeah, that's right.
But they waited a whole year. I went to every single one of those meetings, and my team joined me in those meetings. And we kept on mentioning, when are we going to talk about Park Row? Well, is the traffic study done? Is the analysis done? When can we finally open? And then until recently, last year, and mind you, I think it was part of their plan, because this spring is when they're going to start moving forward with designing of Kim Lau Square and Park Row. And so they waited to the 11th hour. They waited to silence us as a community, even though we've been organizing and collecting thousands, that's only 7,000 petitions, but we have an additional 6,000 petitions that came through our office that we delivered to the mayor. And so we're going to keep on pushing, because I know we have a representative from the mayor's office, but with every election cycle, I see it as an opportunity. If the mayor really wants to represent our community, this is the number one issue, and we should open up Park Row. He has my loyalty in advocating for that. He has many of the people in this community's loyalty for advocating for that, and that's the win that we need for our community to finally be done with this chapter of 9/11 in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was a really, really great recap. I also want to talk about the fact that we don't want this room to be a room of just a one-sided conversation. So obviously, as Chris mentioned, there are people who feel that there's issues involved in reopening Park Row. We absolutely will give you the time at the end to speak about that, what your feelings are. But the work that we've done, and we've done a lot of work, we're constantly in touch with CCBA, constantly in touch with Chris's office to hear opposition viewpoints, but I can assure you it's very, very small. You all represent different factors of this community, and I see that many of you have come in after we did a little roll call, so thank you for joining us again. Triple mentioned the fact that the NYPD came to a closed-door meeting and made an announcement and said this street is going to be permanently closed. The understanding that we had all along was that the closure of Park Row is a temporary thing. The NYPD in 2024 coming into a room and saying, well, 25, since it was January, coming into the room and saying that it's now closed may violate a law. And that law was created by former council member Alan Gerson. It's called the Park Row Bill, Local Law 25, 2005. It's been 25 years since that, 20 years, sorry, since that law was enacted. And what the law says is that any street in New York that is going to be closed for more than 180 days has to go through a public review process initiated by the NYPD or whatever entity that wants to close that particular street. That's the law. The law also says that there's a DOT permitting process that has to take place. At the end of it all, it has to include the local council member as well. So there are hurdles that the NYPD clearly, through a press release and a closed-door presentation, have not observed. So, I think we have a representative from ALDEF in the room, Ani. We would like to tap into your organization to really look into the Park Row bill, and feel free, if you'd like to say a few words about it now, feel free to do that. But we really feel that this may be a violation not only of our of a moral obligation to engage with us, but it may actually be breaking the law. And so Jeannie's presentation was excellent because she named for you streets within our area that were just closed. Well, according to the Park Row bill, those were supposed to have a review for every single street. There are streets in Chinatown, there's at least one street in Chinatown that has not been reviewed, but the DOT came in and said this is now a permanent plaza, no cars. That is also possibly a violation of that bill. So if we're going to elect city agencies, particularly NYPD, to just roll over us, even though it is our community that created the Park Row bill, why are they doing that and what are we going to do about it? Whether it's legally, because clearly we are not afraid to sue the NYPD. We're not afraid to go up against any city agency that is violating the law. And so I implore all of you, do your homework, look into the Park Row bill, but particularly our legal representation of ALDEF, Asian American Bar Association of New York, we'd like to consult with as well. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge a person who is not in the room, who is on vacation right now with her husband traveling in Asia, but Doris Lynn Cohen, former judge, has led this organization in a manner that is just beyond all of our expectation, because she has taken this cause really to heart, and she has created with the president that 300-person town hall, created the network of people, many of whom aren't in this room, and I know was very helpful in getting City Hall here today. So I want to have just a round of applause for Doris, even though she's not here. I mention it because, like Catherine Freed, who's not only a lawyer but a former judge, the legal expertise that we have in our community is staggering. There is a great number of eyes that are going to be on this. The NYPD doesn't know what's coming because we really want to get a handle on this, whether that was legal or not. I'm going to turn it over to the room because we want to hear from you all whether or not you have an opinion about Park Row being closed and why it should be closed, whether or not it should be open and why it should be open. But there's a number of organizations that are in the room now. If you have questions for any of us on the dais, please, we'd really like to hear from you. This is the type of thing that we wish the Chinatown Connections meetings was all about, a more well-rounded representation, and to hear from all of you. And also, yes, Triple says, we're all about having this become much more transparent, this entire discussion. So if anyone has a comment or a discussion, Irving? Okay.
Thank you. Hello, my name is
Try to
Irving.
keep it in 2 minutes, I'm sorry, because we only have the room. We only have the room for a certain amount of time.
My name is Irving Lee. I'm a longtime resident, small property owner, retired transit worker. I spoke to you a few months ago about whether or not the New York City Police Department is still using national security as a basis to close Park Row. And of course, I've taken the position that the whole premise behind the narrative of 9/11 was fundamentally false, that there's no real justification to close Park Row to begin with, because in my opinion, it was a false flag inside operation. So the whole premise is fundamentally false. But leaving that aside, if you want more information, I'll give it to you on that. But leaving that aside, the question is that still the case? Is national security a fundamental basis for closing Park Row? And if that's so, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, so like Triple and I mentioned, just a few minutes ago, last month they came to us and they said that the bomb threat of that area, it makes it a national concern. They used the same presentation that they used 2008, same charts actually, and when you look at the source, it had those years dated. So they used the same excuse, even though when I was talking to the mayor, when I was talking to the deputy mayor, they never brought up national security. We were going to open this. He said, like the video showed, he talked to the NYPD, he talked to the courts, they were all okay with it until the very last minute. And so even though that's the rhetoric that they're using now, I don't think it has any grounds for standing, especially if we push back as a community.
Can I just follow up with the holes?
Let me give Eric a chance first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Eric Yu. I live in Southbridge. By chance, I'm also on CV1. I want to bring up a question as who and what are the reasons why South Park Row should not be open? I want to get that known because, I think we all agree with the bike lane. We all agree with the pedestrian path is there. So I'm just trying to understand who or what group would be against it because I think before we battle the NYPD, we have to have a unified voice. Perhaps there's some compromise so that all, I use the word all stakeholders we can reach consensus. Maybe, because for me, I think one lane in each direction would satisfy the need of at least opening it. Now, I understand there's some other groups, they want more open space, and that's fine. But I'd like to know what can be done to satisfy the opponents of it before we go against the NYPD and the city, because the NYPD is acting on behalf of the city, as far as I'm concerned. There's no, the NYPD is an agency of New York City, so it's not acting alone. It's acting with their tacit approval. But I'd like to know what the reasons are before we can progress. I think we should know that before we progress. Okay.
So, I'll take this quickly. So we showed at the town hall what you can do on Park Road. You can have an extra sidewalk, extra extended sidewalk. You can have a 2-lane bike lane, and you can have 1 lane going both sides and have greenery as well. We presented this to a number of groups. That sufficed. A lot of groups are like, okay, that makes sense. Let's work to figure that out. But there's going to be some groups that want no vehicle traffic, period. And I think at some point, it's almost impossible to negotiate with them because they just don't want to see cars on Park Road. And we have been trying to have this dialogue for, at least my office, for 3 years plus. And I know Jan Lee and others here have been doing it for decades. But I think there is a majority, right? When we mentioned the town hall that the mayor had, when we talk about the petitions that we are able to collect, the super majority of our community wants it open in some shape or some form. There's always going to be a small, tiny little group that doesn't want cars on it. And at that point, you just have to move forward with the group you have.
And I want to point out, there's a flyer that's being passed around. This was brought to our attention. I know it was brought to the council members' attention of this flyer that says, please do not open Park Road to cars and tour buses now. And it has a QR code. But on those flyers that were taped all over Chinatown, on lampposts and all over, there was no authorship. There was no organization to pin to this group. So I hope they're in the room, and I hope they reveal who is putting up these flyers. But the one thing that I really want to implore upon all of you, spread the word. Never click on a QR code that you don't know the organization or you don't know what it is, because the people who have clicked on this likely have had a virus in their phone or their data has been compromised in some way. When this movement has been capitalized by someone, and I just want to be careful that our community's issues should never be compromised in this way, where some organization can take these up and use an issue like ours to capture our community's data. That's what's happening when you see these QR codes that have no authorship. So in contrast to that, these 7,000 signatures, and Chris's office has more, were done out in the open. And I want you to stand up from our Kiwanis Club, and also Chungpak is in the room. I saw Gary. Please stand up, Gary. And of course, CCBA and Chris. They had volunteers at tables like this, and they stood outside and they showed their face and said, please sign. And that is the transparency. That's the comparison that I would like you to take with you. It's this, which is just anonymous, that says, please keep Park Road closed, with no authorship, taped all over Chinatown, capturing your data. Or the Kiwanis Club, Chungpak organization, CCBA, so many organizations that have put their work into collecting these. So I want City Hall to understand there is transparency, and then there's this opaque other force that's behind this. And if you do know, please tell us who these are, because we would like to know. So there's a few hurdles. I'll turn it over back over to the room. Elizabeth? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
You know, there are those who are working behind the scenes and in the shadows. So I will go there and talk about that kind of thing, because today we invited the board presidents of Chatham Green and Chatham Towers.
The two co-ops.
Two co-ops that sit right on Park Road. And as Chris said, the mayor showed him a letter from the Chatham Green president. And I've seen that letter as well. And she claimed to speak on behalf of all the Chatham Green residents, the businesses, the board, and she said, we need more engagement in the community. And I was like, where have you been for 23 years? And the most egregious thing that they recently did was they passed out another anonymous survey to the residents to fill out, and it was so biased, and they even misquoted
the council.
Chris Marte, and he wrote a letter to the president saying, you're misquoting me. And they, regardless, they sent it out anyway. And I would have liked for them to be engaged with the community, and that's why we invited them there. Because I'm confounded why they would do this and why they would operate from the shadows like this. Putting out an anonymous survey, I mean, you can, just like the QR codes, you can glean information from that when people identify themselves. It's dangerous to their co-op residents. So I wish we could find out who was all behind any of this, but we have to be, it's still not the majority. They are a small number of people who should not be validated. And the mayor is not going to get 100% agreement on anything. That just doesn't happen. But just know and be aware, there are people working behind the scenes.
Elizabeth, you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say,
Could you identify the group?
Yes, hi. I was just going to say this. I'm board president of Gotham Park, and I just wanted to say I'm glad this is being recorded, and I wanted to say on the record, Gotham Park is not opposed to the opening up of Park Road to vehicular traffic. We're not opposed to it at all. Provided that the green space that we have sought out in this area will be preserved for the park, provided that there's pedestrian safety and cyclist safety. Provided that that is our only concern. Assuming all of that is in play, we are not opposed to opening up to vehicular traffic. What NYPD is bringing up is more of a public safety counterterrorism concern, and that is not something that Gotham Park as an organization can comment on. So I just wanted to make it clear what Gotham Park's position is.
That's very helpful, thank you, because, and I want to credit the leadership of Gotham Park and also the leadership of Open Park Row now to make these alliances and also make sure that there wasn't anything misunderstood. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, there has never been a discussion of turning Park Row into a car-only and we want as green as possible. The key words here are multimodal transportation options, which means pedestrians, bicycles, what am I leaving out? Cars, and of course our buses. The buses are not going anywhere. So we are aligned in that, and we want to prioritize safety. And I should underscore that we have prioritized safety through several council members, through several presidents of CCBA, and of course several iterations of our groups, Civic Center Residents Coalition and Open Park Row Now. Does anyone have any other comments that they'd like to make? John, why don't you take the microphone back there for me and introduce who you are.
Sure. Hi, my name is John Oates, and I participated in the lawsuit with, I'm a former board of directors of Southbridge Towers, and Southbridge participated in the lawsuit along with Chatham Towers and Chatham Green. And based on the lawsuit, we got them to, actually, you can even see the signs. There are signs on both ends of Park Road that said it's open to emergency vehicles and buses. In practice, no emergency vehicle uses it because it just takes too long to check in. So I've never seen an ambulance and I've never seen a fire department vehicle use Park Road. We at Southbridge Towers on the south side of the bridge are choking to traffic. We desperately need Park Road reopened because the hospital has increased its operation there, And as a result, it's just a parking lot for ambulances, and they can't get in, they can't get out. So we really need that to happen. A couple of observations, if I may. When they originally closed Park Row, I walked around and I looked and I saw a few things that disturbed me. First of all, it kind of makes both Chatham Towers and Chatham Green part of the target, as well as the high school. And at one time, I haven't looked lately, but they used to have gasoline filling pumps there, which further, you know, if a bomb were to hit, I feel very sorry for anybody who lived in that area, because they would be very badly affected. Now some time has passed. We're talking 23 years, I guess, at this point in time. And times have changed. At that time, we had no cell phones, we had no Zoom meetings, we had a lot of things that we have now, we didn't have. So I saw the commissioner at that time, it was Bratton, on New York 1, and he was talking about when Police Plaza was built for 2,200 staffers in there. And he said, this was going back maybe 10 years, because it's a long time since he's been the police commissioner. He said there are now 4,700 people reporting there. So just from a safety point of view, if your building was designed to hold 2,200 people, why would you want 4,700 people there at this point? So what I'm going to suggest to this group, why don't, if the police department feels the security is such a problem, and having all of this possibility of Zoom meetings and everything else, why don't we move police headquarters the hell out of there? Wouldn't this solve everybody's problem? There'd be no security problem, and Chatham Towers and Chatham Green would feel a lot better, and the high school would be a lot safer. So why don't we consider working on that in the background? And bring it as a suggestion, bring it to the mayor, talk about it. Serious issue.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you for being part of the lawsuit so many years ago. I do want to bring something to your attention. Just recently, the city, and Chris, you may want to opine on this, the federally owned building right down the block from the jail that's there, which is the MCC, which is now empty. There's another huge office complex, has just went up for sale to the public. Now, that doesn't sound like a security issue if an enormous building on Park Row has just become available to the public for sale. So, you know, this is, Irving brought it up. Does this have an impact on our safety on a federal level? And maybe we should be talking with our federal representatives to discuss what are the potentials for that building to become?
You're talking 100 Bull.
No.
Silvio
Molo building.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as of 48 hours, it was posted.
That's not confirmed.
It's listed.
It's listed.
I mean, the Trump administration is listing a lot of things,
Yeah.
but as the person who works for the
you want the mic?
Congress member, that is not confirmed.
Okay. Can we do wishful thinking?
Of course.
This is MCC, right?
John
MCC.
Glasgow, Deputy Chief of Staff, the Malo building. This is where the U.S. Attorney's office is, which is right when you're walking to 1PP. It's the building to the left, but it's also, there's a staircase going up from Park Road. It's the Malo building. So as we saw, there were reports yesterday that GSA, which is the federal agency that hosts all the federal buildings, which if you've ever been to the Congressman's Manhattan office, we are in a federal building, so hopefully they're not sold, because then we have no district office. But as you all know, the Trump administration is doing a lot of movement here. They're getting rid of regional offices in HUD. They're getting rid of regional offices in Social Security. And there's a lot of work to push back against the Trump administration, including with federal buildings. So yes, there was an article that came out, a list of federal buildings in Lower Manhattan. I'm talking about courthouses, where 26 Federal Plaza is. All the buildings are probably on a chopping block, but there is no confirmation here because, not to make this political, but the Trump administration goes and says a lot of things, right? And then we have to push back on the administration. So I just want to be careful about announcing that because there is no sort of confirmation to any of that. It is the Trump administration moving as the Trump administration would. The other thing I just wanted to say is that, I came here to listen in. The congressman was just elected in 2023. We became new to this issue, right? So you all have a lot of history here. I grew up in the Lower East Side, not too far, so I'm familiar with Park Row because I used to work at what's the city council building? 250 Broadway. I forgot it already. But yeah, exactly. And I worked for Council District 2, the neighboring council district. So I wasn't so familiar with the history behind Park Row, but I was familiar with the closure of streets because just on Avenue D and 12th Street, if you ever remember driving, if you did, or if you were a passenger like I was, I'm not a driver, if you were on the FDR, right, you remember taking that 14th Street exit, or the bus would go there, the 14D would go there, and then they closed that as well. That became a closed area. So I'm very familiar with those closed areas. One thing I was going to say, I lost my train of thought, but
We've been working together.
Yeah, and we've been working together, right? I think the most powerful piece of this is that no matter what all the different opinions are, the most important piece is that the community come together as one. And someone said it, someone talked about a compromise. Eric, you talked about a compromise. I think that that is super important. One thing I will say is that when the mayor's office or when the deputy mayor and the NYPD came out and said, we've decided that Park Row is going to be closed, and let me also say that one thing we all agree on is that NYPD parking has to go. Whether it's open, whether it's closed, we don't want the NYPD parking on Park Row. Everyone is in agreement on that, no matter the side you're on. But when the city came and said the mayor decided that Park Row is going to be closed to vehicular traffic, we are going to get rid of east side parking. However, we're going to leave the remaining west side parking. And first of all, Robin is amazing, so none of this is at Robin's. You're amazing. Thank you for showing up and being here. One thing all the elected said is, if you really want to make this a pedestrianized zone and create the foot traffic so that our small businesses in Chinatown can actually thrive, because they have been suffering from 9/11 closure, from COVID-19, so on and so on, then you can't just leave NYPD vehicles on the west side. That makes no sense. If you really want to pedestrianize this area, the congressman has been explicit in saying, then you also need to get rid of the cops parking on the west side. We've been working, all the elected officials have been working to address this with City Hall, and also to say we want a meeting to discuss this very issue. We are waiting for a response to our meeting requests.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions or things that are confusing that we've talked about? Go ahead.
My question is,
Yeah. Load it.
The town hall last time in CCBA is downstairs. So it seems like repeating all the questions that it is similar. Just tell me that, what are you going to do? Just that.
Repeating ourselves has great value. I know that a lot of the things that we covered are very similar to the town hall. To have the NYPD repeat themselves from 2008 till now, it's very confusing to us as well. And so now we have a number of things that have come up, right? We have a possible change in leadership of the entire city of New York. And just to remind you, a few weeks ago, less than a couple of weeks ago, the first time in 235 years, the governor was going to remove the mayor. 4 deputy mayors, including the deputy mayor who oversaw this project, Park Row plus Chatham Square, walked out the door. We have 4 deputy mayors who are gone. So we need to report this again, because City Hall is going to change drastically. It already has changed drastically. So that leaves us with the question, who's running City Hall? We have a jail that is now $16 billion. The Manhattan jail is $3.8 billion. It will be thrust into construction very soon. The contracts are being signed. Who's reading the contracts? Who's approving the contracts? Who's understanding the institutional knowledge that we took the time to build up about that? 20 years of institutional knowledge in this room. Community people have created this movement. And so, yes, we do have to repeat ourselves, apparently. because every time we come up with these difficult situations in City Hall, we're gonna have to continue to repeat it again and again. And Chris, really, how do we address this, Chris? With the change of government, we have our deputy mayors, as you said, you actually had a relationship with the deputy mayor to start this conversation. You got very far to a pilot program. What do we do with the change of administration and the person you talked to is not there anymore?
Yeah, you know, for us, when the winds change is when we take advantage, right? When we first met with the deputy mayor of public safety at the time, who's no longer with the administration, he was fully supportive of this. He stepped down, a new deputy mayor took over the situation, and the winds changed, and they decided to not support our plan for a number of reasons that I mentioned. And so, you know, Jan is right. Every election cycle is a great opportunity for our community to tell our candidates what we want to see. Park Row has been on the top of that list for the past 20 years, and will continue to be on the top of the list until we actually open it up. However, there's also other avenues. You know, Jan Lee mentioned the legislation that Alan Gerson passed 20 years ago. We're ready to investigate that and pursue any legal measure necessary to make sure that this administration is following the law, that the NYPD is following the law. And so there are a number of ways, a number of avenues that can happen at the same time that we can pursue to make sure that agencies are held accountable, but more importantly, that we can finally open up Park Row.
Mariama hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. I'm Mariama James. I live in Southbridge. I am also district leader in Lower Manhattan. I have lived in Lower Manhattan for almost 54 years, when all these neighborhoods flowed into each other nicely. Okay, so yeah, so I may be a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but I think that there's a lot at play here, more than just what we've touched on. I think that what's going on with housing and what's going on with streetscapes in general, and the paid lobbyists that are involved, like Open New York and Transalt, who are not the same transportation alternatives people as they were with the Strap Hangers campaign. This is totally different people.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a plan. Okay, because we go back to, like you said, pre 9/11, Chinatown was such a thriving community. And every time it begins to get back on its feet, there's some kind of setback, whether it's a natural disaster or a manufactured one, right?
Jails.
Exactly. And I think that we've reached the point where the intention is to change these streetscapes, to cause the businesses to fail and to be moved out so that they can knock down the low-rise buildings and put in these super talls everywhere. And have these places for people specific, this very specific demographic of people who have the jobs that afford them the opportunity to pay for astronomical rents that not everybody else has. Pushing working class people and people of color to the outer boroughs and beyond. And creating just a large enclave for, again, that very specific demographic of people who live here and work right there. And so, yeah, you have all the options available to you because you make a ton of money. You can drive a car and pay whatever taxes or fees are imposed upon you. You can get in a black car and pay someone else to drive you around. You can take the train, you can take the bus, you can take the cab, you can take a helicopter. I mean, they have all these different means of getting around. And so they don't care about communities that have been closed off from the rest of the world, where there is no bus, or where they stick a bus in a very haphazard place that's harmful potentially to people. They don't care about any of that because they want you to leave. And so I think we have to start focusing on some of those things and watch who we're electing, right? You mentioned that there was one elected that turned this whole thing around. I can guess who that person was. I don't know who it was, and we've never spoken about it, but I have an idea. Because there are some that are so deep in the bed with these paid lobbyists that they're gonna suffocate in there.
Thank you, Mariam.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I absolutely agree with you, and that's what happened in Harlem, right? when the low-rise buildings were taken over. So I don't know if people know this, but Chinatown was the first community where Mayor Bloomberg at the time and Transportation Alternatives and the DOT tried to take over our streets. That was in 2008 and 2009. So this is another attempt to do that. After the pandemic and after congestion pricing has come in, there's another attempt to gentrify our area in a major way. And they're trying to reconfigure our streets whether we like it or not, or agree with the positioning of it. But I support bike lanes, but we have to be thoughtful about where we're going to put them. So thank you very much.
Catherine?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what Mariam has been saying, because a number of us have been saying that Chinatown has become the new bright, shiny object. And it's not just Chinatown, it's a lot of the other downtown communities. In fact, even prior to COVID, there was the upzoning of Soho, NoHo, and Chinatown, which Chris was a major force fighting against. I was a judge at the time, although when I retired, one of the first things I did was come to a press conference to talk, not only support Chris, but also to talk about the opposing the upzoning. It was the first time that an historic district was actually upzoned since they created landmarks preservation. So that opened up the door. Since that time, you've seen a lot of things like the City of Yes, and I have to give credit again to Chris because he did vote against it. Yeah. And yes, a lot of the areas like Open New York, which essentially wants to do the upzoning, wanted to do upzoning throughout most of the area. And I think we have to be aware of that, and things like Transit Riders Alliance, who have also been combining with Open New York to target our area and the Lower East Side, because we're the next area that you can really develop. You can throw out people, especially people of color, low-income people, and develop it. Because as Mariama pointed out, you know, they have cars, they get around, they don't depend on the subway, so it's no longer protection to live on the skirts of, say, Manhattan, or in a very crowded area that has been protected, like Chinatown. So I think we have to be aware of that. It doesn't mean we should stop. I think it just means that with the election coming up, Chris's point that there may or may not be a change in most of the city offices. It's time for us to really say, if this is what we want, then we have to approach everyone who's running for something and say, this is what we want. If you want support from our communities, we want you to pledge yourself that you will do this. And if you don't do it, if you get in office, we will hold you accountable, because this community that has been lied to so many times by so many people running for office who said, I will support this, and then when they get in office, they don't. So I think we have to make it clear that we are a force, and we intend to, continue to be a force and to protect our areas.
I want to recognize Tammy from Community Board 1, but I have a question for you, Tammy. Mariama mentioned developers and development lobbies. The other end of Park Row is 100 Gold. That is the building that is 13 stories. It now houses HPD. It also houses a number of government offices, but it also houses 15,000 square feet of Hamilton Madison House. We provide hot meals to seniors there, 500 a day for 5 days a week, and we've been doing it for decades. That building's going to be torn down. The official notice has been that the 13-story building at 100 Gold is being torn down. It literally is the other end, the south end of Park Row. So maybe you could give us an idea of the scale, the size of what's coming, and how that has hit on the desks of CB1, and how it relates to Park Row.
You're not going to like what I have to say. Okay. So we were notified this project is being pushed by the mayor's office, specifically through EDC. If you'll see, The Real Deal put notification out, and there's an article in Cranes if you want to look at any of that. The key to understand is they're looking to use ULURP to take it from what is an FAR now of, I believe, 8 or 10 to go to FAR 18 and to make a building that is as tall as the Gary building right up the street. And the difference is the Gary building is a much, the tinfoil building is a much more narrow building. The footprint and the block for this is much larger. Combine that with the fact that the city is looking to sell the building for the highest price it can get, but is not putting a dime of that money back in to do socioeconomically diverse housing. They're putting the onus for affordable housing on the developer who would do 485X, which is a state-funded program. So the city's plan, and this falls on the mayor's office, is to sell an asset owned by the people of New York and not put one dime of that money into affordable housing. What they're using the money for is they would like to purchase another building for HPD. It is ironic that that they're using the money for buying desk space and putting zero back to, and it says in the Crane's article, it will not be public dollar funded. This is city-owned property. We should be saying, we don't care if you build it to 95 stories, but what we do care about is having socioeconomically diverse housing, which will support Chinatown. We need not only low-income housing, we need moderate-income housing. We need people who will walk down Park Row to get to Chinatown to support the businesses and enjoy Gotham Park and enjoy all the services in the city. So from my perspective, it's an opportunity for more people, but we need it to be more people who live here, not pet-a-terres, not empty towers, not 70% occupied. We want 100% occupied, and the best way that you do that is by socioeconomically diverse housing. It is really incredible to me that Lower Manhattan and the Lower East Side and Chinatown get treated like a stepchild compared to other areas. Long Island City, 50% affordable housing. Gansevoort, 50% affordable housing. What is the city doing for us? Nothing. And if, let's be honest, the conditions are not great for the department that's there. I understand that. Well then, where was the DCAS study to relocate them within open space? Why are you leaving those people there for 3 to 5 years to continue working in what they call substandard conditions? It makes no sense, the priorities of the city, which brings me back to Park Row. No matter what building is put there, it will add tons of traffic.
Yeah.
It will add delivery.
Yeah.
It will add Amazon. It will add groceries. It's supposed to have ground floor retail, which would be awesome if the ground floor retail and commercial supported affordable housing above, but that's not the conversation that the city's looking at. We need to have a discussion, because if NYPD tells us it is so dangerous that you cannot open Park Row, then how is it not so dangerous that you can open a 90-story building on the other end?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So, I mean, for those of us who have lived here, I've lived here since '96 downtown. I know what it is to be behind barricades. After 9/11, I lived behind barricades for over a year. You can find a way. Our technology has gotten better. Our intelligence has gotten better. We need to do better urban planning. And that's the failure of this administration, is in urban planning for Lower Manhattan. And that includes, what can Park Row be? Why can't we have nights and weekends open to get traffic through? Why can't we find a way to support all of the parks and all of the neighborhoods so people come down and stay?
Yeah.
My fear is that they are slowly choking Chinatown. Why come to Chinatown and pay $9 to come in if you can go to Queens? That's not good for us. That's not good for Lower Manhattan. It's not good for the people who live here.
Can I have a suggestion? Just a suggestion.
Go ahead, just really quick.
Very quick. So since the voice is pretty clear in the community, from the community, and the voice already pretty clear from the community, and the decision is on the mayor. So now this is the election year. Every mayor,
instead of repeating ourselves, why don't you have a mayor forum?
So it is in the works. Other organizations, 5 organizations with the help of CCBA in the month of March, we don't have a date yet, is going to put together a mayor candidate forum, exactly what Lotus said. This is one of the questions that will be posed to the candidates who come. Hopefully they all come. Elizabeth, you had something that you wanted to say. I want to pass this over to you quickly.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we have to leave. So,
Yep,
sorry, Elizabeth Lewinson. So in addition to being the board chair of Coffin Park, I want to just say that in full transparency, I worked at NYPD Counterterrorism as the director of policy and plans back about 18 years ago. And I understand everyone's concerns in this room. There is something to the terrorism threat. It's not nothing. And my suggestion to everybody here is that if you really want to move forward with this discussion, go talk, have a more robust conversation with NYPD Counterterrorism. Not necessarily the political, not necessarily the commissioner, she's a political appointee. I mean, although she's had a lot of experience, she's had many, many years working at NYPD Counterterrorism, so probably Commissioner Tisch, maybe someone you would want to have a conversation with, but you want to have a conversation with the actual people in counterterrorism. Not the Deputy Commissioner of Public Safety, that's again a political position. You want to talk to the people who are responsible for creating counterterrorism policy, and those are the people in the room, in the counterterrorism division. And my suggestion is, and I'm happy to talk about this more with anybody at any other point in the future, but my suggestion is, if you want to move forward, talk to them.
Can I address that?
Counterterrorism has been part of all of our conversations for years, and so maybe if you were in the room, you would know that we've been in dialogues. They've been at Community Board 1, they've been at the Chinatown Connection meetings, and they've been even at Gotham Park meetings talking about the establishment of that. So counterterrorism has always been part of the dialogue, and hopefully will continue to be.
Can I address that also?
Yeah, but Chris, at the end of an entire 45-minute presentation on counterterrorism, NYPD said, but we'll do whatever the mayor says. If he's how high do we jump? But there's so many things. Yeah, there's so many things to poke holes in the security story, right? They're still vulnerable on Center Street. They're still vulnerable on Worth Street.
Can I address something before Elizabeth leaves?
Yeah.
Elizabeth, just to let you know that we consulted a global security expert on the security and asked him what should be done. And he said what's done all over the world, which is bollards on the streets around the buildings that need to be secure, and harden the underpass under police headquarters. That's done all over the world.
So it's much more complicated than that. Okay, it's not just bollards. Okay, we're talking about several terrorist targets in the city. The bridge being one of them, as well as 1PP and the courthouses. It's a very complicated conversation. And for people to just say, oh, I think this, I think that, this is my opinion. I mean, you really need to talk about the experts and talk to the experts in counterterrorism and get answers from them. I'm making that suggestion, and I think that's the only way that you can actually move forward.
We did hear from counterterrorism the concerns that we had, and this may stem directly from above them in the mayor's office, is the documents and the data that they used in the most recent presentation that they gave in January.
I heard that. It's
Not-
from 2008.
Beyond that, they did not know that the MCC was closed.
Okay.
The gentleman giving the presentation. So we are trying, but we're not getting counterterrorism to come to the table and look at opportunities on ways to open.
Okay, well, maybe I can facilitate that, maybe someone else can facilitate that. I don't know what to tell you, but what I'm saying is, just because they presented a document for 2008 doesn't necessarily mean that the same concerns are not still there, okay?
Yeah.
The questions that you have for them that you're voicing in this room, you should address to them. Talk to them about it, Tammy. Tell what you just told me.
We did.
Tell counterterrorism that,
We
and
did.
have a direct conversation with them about it.
We did.
We did.
And
We did.
When they
getting
said
nothing?
closed
Nothing.
Park Row.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, when we
Absolutely. We
Well,
were in that meeting and several of us spoke up.
At
Several.
downtown,
At the Chinatown Connection
I think it
Working
has
Group.
to be another meeting. I think it
Well,
has to.
I'm hopeful when EDC is presenting at the Transportation Committee in CB1 and CB3 this month, that everyone shows up and says something, because counterterrorism
has not responded to the
Okay,
community.
well.
That is, wait, Elizabeth, let me
I'm just saying,
there is an
we can do that.
opportunity, I just want to, before everyone leaves, there is an opportunity to go to the community board hearing. Chinatown Connections leadership has to present there periodically. The entire public is welcome to go, and I think that is, as Elizabeth had said, bring those questions to the Chinatown Connections meeting, because at least they're making those meetings public. All community board meetings are public. So I would urge everyone here to really go to that meeting and talk and reiterate what's being said there. What, can you just read it to me?
Yeah, sure.
Board 3 is
Board 3 is Tuesday, March 11th.
March 11th.
Next Tuesday.
Next
Next
Tuesday,
Tuesday
March
at
11th.
45 Suffolk Street.
45 Suffolk Street.
At 6:30.
Oh, and the CB1 is tonight. You want to just make an announcement about how to see that presentation?
You can log in onto the community board website at live.mcb1. You can get there from our website, from Community Board 1, if you can't make it in person. But I will be honest and say that a couple of us are jetting out of here shortly, and we're going over to 1 Center Street. We're welcome for anybody who'd like to attend. That'd be great. Thank you.
So, we want to take a minute for Robin if she has any questions for us, but also to address questions to her. As again, you know, we're very fortunate to have City Hall in the room, and we're happy that you're here to listen, but also if you have any questions, let me start with Triple, and anyone else who has a question for City Hall, please raise your hand after.
Can I say
Of
something?
course, please.
Hi, everybody. I know many of you here, and just by way of background, I used to work for Alan Gerson after Catherine was term limited out, and it was his legislation that's been referred to here. I live in Battery Park City and was affected by 9/11 directly as Tammy was. I appreciate the situation here. I work for the mayor. I know that there is a lot of fervor against the closure, and I have been part of that fervor, and I'm happy to take questions. I'm sure that I will need to take them back, but I'm listening. I've taken a lot of notes. I've worked with the people on the dais, most of them, and I'm happy to hear what you have to say. So thank you.
There's, as I was saying, there's so much to poke holes in this idea of security. So this is a manufactured thing that they're bringing back, that we forced this issue to talk about. But what I want to ask you, Robin, is what my worry is that while the mayor fights for his political life, that people inside the administration are taking advantage of it and pushing their agenda through, like Chief Officer of the Public Domain, or whoever else. And I have not heard the mayor go back on his promise that we all listened to. And I haven't heard him say, yes, it should be closed permanently. In fact, besides maybe talking to the press or an article here and there, I don't think any official statement which the EDC, NYPD, or DOT has made to say that the mayor made this decision to do this. He hasn't said it.
So what are you asking?
So I'd like to know if that's his, is that what he said? Because I need to go, no. Did he go back on his word? Because according to that town hall, he would do whatever Chinatown wants. And it's obviously from this group here, and not a minority few, there is a majority of people who want it open and have been wanting it open for 23 years.
I hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question for Robin? For Robin?
Not for Robin.
I just want to,
Robin, to ask the mayor.
To ask the mayor, or if you have something that you would like to say to the mayor, this is a great opportunity, folks. Yeah. And we could always reach Robin as well, but it's nothing like having you in the room.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay, with that said, oh, I'm sorry, Weiwa, please, you pass the mic to her. And announce who you're from.
Oh, hi Weiwa, thank you.
Wei Wan Chen, I'm the founding president of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance of Greater New York. And since we do have all of these representatives today, I want to make it absolutely, absolutely clear. I don't know anybody in Chinatown who does not want Park Row reopened. I don't know anybody who's like that. And so all the people who are putting up those flyers, we don't know who they are. They're part of that dark mass that it really shouldn't be anywhere. The other thing is that it does link to other things that we've talked about tonight on congestion pricing. It impacts us really, really badly. And again, I don't know anybody here in Chinatown that likes congestion pricing. It kills this community. Yeah, we don't know who these guys are who support it, right? They're certainly against us. Now we'll go down the list. The jail, all right? This whole nonsense of trying to impose on this community, which has suffered enough, a jail that's going to be one of the tallest in the world, that's outrageous. And even if you cut it down, this is not a solution. It is not a solution for this community. It is not a solution for this entire city. So I want to make it clear, I don't know anybody who thinks that we should be building the community jail here who is from this community, and it's not a NIMBY issue. They don't want it in the other boroughs either, okay? You know, and we have in Chinatown supported the other communities in saying that we don't want them to have the community jails either. You know, we should go and do what is right. Make sure that the crime does not make our communities suffer, because crime is also making our community suffer. And we do need proper types of crime and safety policies. So with that being said, I would like to pass it back to you and say, what should we be doing and what is the timetable for all of us? And let's make it in like the next quarter and then the half year. We know that there's election coming up, but I think we want to know a little bit faster, a little bit closer. Is it going to be injunctions? Is it going to be legal action? And then later, off to November. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for putting this together.
Thank you. Just really quickly about a timeline. As far as the jail goes, we are under an extremely accelerated timeline. The contractor that has been shortlisted is going to sign that contract this spring, meaning within a few weeks. So, you know, the city, the community may be protesting that. I know that Chris and I are talking about potentially launching a big protest to stop that contract from signing. Who the hell signs a contract when you have no government? The government is completely disarray. There's no one at the wheel. Our chief of operations, deputy mayor, is gone. She walked out the door. Is now the time to sign a contract? Of course it isn't. So this is a position that we have to take. Is it really worth it to start accelerating this process of closing Park Row when we don't even have a government in place right now that is stable? So as John alluded to, there are federal administrative things that are happening that may actually sell off some of these buildings. Let's wait until that happens before we start changing our traffic patterns drastically by closing Park Row, by redesigning Chatham Square. But I wanted to take one more thing, Robin, if you can. We talked to EDC about this. The vice president of EDC I've discussed it with. We talked with the Manhattan Deputy Commissioner of Transportation with this idea. I talked with the Assembly Member's office about this. We get notices separately, and Chris's office gets notices, all of us get notices, district leaders get notices that says the jail bulletin is happening this way for the next coming week. And then we get one that says 70 Mulberry Street is happening. And then we get another one that says the Chatham Square redesign thing is happening. None of these projects have a singular map or a singular timeline that we could look at where we as a community have live updates, live information. Everything is static, everything is in a silo, and we have to choose which one of these we're gonna read and how that figures in with the other calendar and how that works with the DOT and how that works with another street closure. In the meantime, our businesses are waiting for their 8 o'clock egg delivery. Our people who are going about their business have to wait for their clients. They're not in these meetings. And so we have the dubious task of collating all of these notices and trying to figure out how we tell our business community what street's gonna be closed, what's gonna happen next, when is 70 Mulberry Street gonna start, all of which is construction, all of which requires trucks and demolition and coordination and street closures and all of these impacts, and we don't have a singular map to look at. So I really would like you to take that back to City Hall, work with the Department of Transportation, work with EDC, because we certainly have asked for it long enough.
I'm aware of that specific ask just recently. Some of you here will remember a time where there was a Lower Manhattan Construction Command Center, in which I played a fairly integral role.
Yes.
And that was really the purpose, because there was so much going on post 9/11 in terms of development, billions and billions of dollars, that there needed to be a coordinating agency. And I hear what you're saying. I think that there's room for dialogue. I don't know that we'll see another LMCCC, but I hear you, and I think we should talk about that going forward.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for not. Eric, and I'm gonna have one more question after Eric, because we want to be mindful of CCBA's time, and thank you for this. So we'll do Eric and then Victoria.
No, let's be quick. So
Okay.
what's the next step? What's the next step? Is there any action that any of us need to do so that?
Okay, before we answer that, Victoria? And if you have a suggestion about what next steps
That
are,
was
please.
actually exactly what I was going to do. I was going to suggest that, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for hosting the CCBA. As organizers, that we pay attention to, it is election season, to when particularly the mayoral forums are being held, but also the borough president forums, controller forums, city council forums, all of these, that you reach out and that there's maybe an email that goes out, hey, this is where the forum is. And everybody sends an email. If you're able to attend, you attend and ask, so that it's on everyone's radar. So that this is how, it's not just downtown, but it's all over. So that's how we build the strength to make a difference here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mariama, one more?
Just to add to that, I would say more so than just focusing on attending forums. Make sure that you're doing your research as to who these people are and whether or not they have ties to these lobby groups, you know, like Open New York, like Trans, or like Riders Alliance, or whatever. Because that's how you quickly figure out who's at the root of what I'm dealing with and who's not. And then you can choose from whoever's left over. But I wouldn't give any attention to any of these people who, you know, are at the brunt of what's going on here.
That's good advice.
Anyone else who hasn't been heard who would like to have a say, Mary, just a couple of minutes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, my name is Mary Tom. I want to share a little history with you. And I'm damn mad. And you ought to be too. In the 1950s, there's a man called Robert Moses. He was a city planner and a known racist. Excuse me, racist. And because he was a racist, he didn't like the Chinese people. He wanted to build a highway right through Chinatown. Okay? But I think there's powers above him that told him otherwise. And that was Nixon. But it's well recorded of his intention. Number two, this systemic problem, whether it's racial or greed, is killing us as a minority. For example, it took me a year to do some survey about trees. Chinatown didn't have much trees, except in the park that we have in Columbus Park. But, you know, what about the other street? Canal, Division, Allen, none. And so I went to the park commissioner, had a talk with him, and fast forward, we now have over 400 trees planted in Chinatown area.
Thank you so much.
And it didn't take that much. It just took focus and not allowing yourself to be denied. And the reason why, we're taxpayers.
And I think Chris had something to do with those
And I
trees
think
too.
you did.
And Justin as well.
Okay, so second thing I wanted to point out real quickly. Many people take the M102, 103, 101. Back in the 70s, up to the 70s, there used to be an express 101 from City Hall straight up to Harlem and then back. After the 70s, the MTA made a decision, well, let's starve Chinatown. Now we only have one 101, M103. The 2 and the 1, they are to turn around when they get down to Village, 6th Street. And the intention is to starve Chinatown. Why? Okay? So I know this because I spoke to MTA management. All right, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
You have one more thing you want to say?
Yeah. Hey, do you mind, Wellington? Can I bring you into this conversation because we would really appreciate your point of view as far as strategy moving forward. You know, what are the businesses saying as head of FIT? You know, like Chinatown Partnership. What's your position and what do you think we should do? You work closely with DRI and have replied to it.
Thank you. It's a good question. In our study of the past history of Chatham Square, the Park Road, dating back to the Lenape Indians, right? The native that were here for several thousand years. Park Road is a critical link, and it will continue to be a critical link. And it is been alluded to, you know, the foot traffic is very, very important. As been pointed out with the placard parking. I think the key question for us is not the Part A. I do believe that Park Road will be reopened, maybe whenever. It could be whatever time you deem it to be, politically or otherwise. The Part B does not ask is what then? Where's your parking? Where's your parking? Right? So I have always said, take it one step further, congestion pricing. You're forcing elected civic servants that may not be driving in, now with the allotted 1.5 million office workers that should be here. If you're not coming in, can we have those parking spaces, please? Right, so you can go online and look at our Google study, is that we have interns every summer which are about to start, and they will survey the streets in the area, just outside of the zone, not just the 450 parking spots on the community parking garage that's underneath Police Plaza. You have 700 to 800 parking spaces out there that's used up by public service. And if you're not coming in on, let's say, Friday, if you're not coming in on Monday or Tuesday or whatever, I have always mentioned this before about amnesty days, meaning that if 5 days out of the week, there are 1 or 2 days that we know for sure you're not coming in, can we turn over? And don't underestimate the 800 parking spaces. As Jen advocated for parking, you know, you were on Mott Street about parking, and the common goal is the same, which is to say, the 800 parking spaces turn into 4,000 parking spaces, 4,000 parking lots. That's a lot of parking lots. And for the seniors that are coming in to here, that's a medical center. As you know, this is Chinatown is renowned for doctors. At one time, more doctors than we have restaurants, right? And that's not highlighted. The top 10 Chinatown restaurants are actually top of New York City. So there are many different ways that we can do that will be without having to build a garage that's several $1 million or $50 million or whatever.
We're gonna take the parking issue up with Robin as well. I know that she's well aware. So, but thank you, Wellington. Also, appreciate your optimism that Park Road is going to be open at some point. But with this, I want to be very mindful of your time. Again, thank you all for coming here. It's incredible the conversation that has taken place. I'm going to let our president close this meeting, and another word from our council member, but President Choi.
Okay, again, I'd like to thank you everyone for attending this meeting. even though we don't have a solution yet, but I think it's really a productive meeting.
We'll look up the legal.
So, yeah, we are going to look up the legal matter, and also at the same time, yes.
Take a poll.
If
How many people want it open? Take a poll.
if you want to have another meeting, all right, just let me know, and I really would like to. I will open the space for everybody again. Anything?
Closing.
Hand it to Chris.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everyone that took the time to be out here. You know, it's hard to make all these meetings when people have other lives that they have to deal with, but it really shows that this community cares about this issue and that it has been the #1 issue in Chinatown for decades. And so you have my full commitment to keep on pushing forward, regardless who's our deputy mayor, regardless who our mayor is. Like, I am on your side and I'm ready to fight with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think the next step is perhaps if there are any legal updates, we should have another town hall or another panel,
Yes,
whatever.
and Annie, I don't know, if you have any words to close with, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But we are going to be in touch with Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, with Asian American Bar Association of New York, and and of course our legal counsel here. We will be pursuing that vigorously, and also hopefully have a dialogue with the mayor's office. But thank you all. Thank you for the meeting.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.